They say walk in your truth and not in your shadows. They also tell you you're too much, making you feel like a burden, but they always want you to speak up for what isn't spoken. Unspoken truth, hiding behind an unspoken poet, unspoken stories, never get told by unspoken words. Yo, what's good? It's your girl, Becky the Poet here. Welcome to the Unspoken Words podcast. You guys, we have Séon the Poet here. Last week, we had Isabella J. Mansfield all the way out from Howell, Michigan, if I'm correct. I'm going to have to be, corrected on that in the comments. But you guys, we have Séon here, and he is a poet. He's a podcast host of two podcasts, Haiku Vibes and Poetry Talk. So actually Haiku Vibes was your first podcast, right?
That it was.
I was very intrigued because there's this podcast in the UK where Sophia Thakur, one of my favorite poets, and it's a minute long, but literally the whole podcast is of them being silent. That was
wow.
Literally the guy was like, we have Sophia Thakur, and she's like, hey guys. And then the podcast for a minute, maybe even longer, was silent. So pretty much I think the whole point of that podcast was what is she hearing in her setting, you know? But that was a very weird podcast for me because I'm so used to podcasts being audio. So it's we have Séon, let's go silent. And you're on the you're on the recording with me and it's going silent. And I'm like, he probably thinks this is weird, but here we
No, that's a pretty interesting way of doing it.
Yeah.
So, I the concepts of my podcast came, it really came just during pandemic times.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of just give those sort of short bursts of relaxation and meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the whole meditation ordeal because I think all of us sometimes needs to just tune out sometime and just relax.
Yeah, absolutely. I have, and what it was, so, if you don't mind, I'll talk a little bit about it.
Go right ahead.
So how it came about was, I had a bunch of haikus.
Okay.
And I found a couple of other podcasts and maybe one other podcast. I forgot what it's called, but I used to listen to it years ago. And it would just be a guy saying haiku. But that's just really what it was, a guy saying haiku. And I'm like, well, I could be a guy saying haiku. And it kind of started off that way.
Yeah.
But then I said, well, I have a lot of haiku and a lot of meditative things. And I said, well, let's jazz it up. Let's beef it up a little bit. Let's add some music. Let's pace it. Let's add some breathing exercises because those were self-care things that I was working on to help me through, especially the early parts of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so I said, who knows? Maybe I might get one person listen to it. And I got a lot more than one person listening to it, but I just go into it. And even with my newer podcast now, I even kind of go into it with I just want to have that one person. If I have one person, I can influence one person, that'll be awesome. But it's humbling, when you've grown an audience,
yeah,
especially with no ad budget or anything like that. But yeah, and so it's not just a guy saying haiku. My wife actually does it too, because some of the things she's like, we could use a female voice on here. And so she does it. So she does it just fine using her female voice and giving that sort of thing. But, I just have hundreds of haiku written, and that's just how that came about.
All right, see, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. I ain't prepared you for this, but I want you to go ahead and drop a haiku for us now at this moment in time.
Okay, so I recently, well, not me, but my wife recently had a baby. So
you had the baby too. You had the baby too. You was part of the experience. You was part of the making.
Oh, and God knows I was part of the labor and delivery experience too.
Right.
There's a lot going on there. So
you eat the placenta?
Nah. I don't know about that one. you know, but definitely part of the, breathing and all of that. So I will just let that sort of come into my mind when I write this haiku. And generally, I like sometimes I count syllables on my fingers. It might seem too rudimentary, but hey, here we go. All right. Fatherhood, sunshine, a ray of light in the world. I am a dad. Wow. And that's the haiku.
Nice. You know what? I will say this. A haiku is very short and simple. What is the role of a haiku?
Well, for me, and for a lot of people, you want to, because it's so short and because it's so simple, you want to tell a story in a short version, and as short of a version as possible. And a lot of times people think that length, and they look at length being a challenge. Like, okay, I'm gonna write a long poem. That's such a challenge, and it is. But in some ways, it's a big challenge to tell a story in 17 syllables. And so it's hard. So I'm like, okay, how am I gonna tell this story? How am I gonna talk about my day? How am I gonna write about the writing process? And so I just usually make a lot of different short stories, and most of it, especially from a traditional standpoint, like the traditional Japanese way, is usually they point towards something in nature, in the very first line. So a lot of times I like to use things from the natural world. So my daughter's name is Rayanne, and so that's why I want to play on the ray of sunshine.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like the fact that poetry nowadays is becoming a free verse type of poem. Everything's free verse now. Nothing is ever structured anymore. And when you're in school, you learn about all these different ways of writing, but now free verse is the easiest way to go.
Yeah, and it really isn't. So what I tend to do, because I was lucky enough to actually pursue a degree in what I love, and in writing and so on. So
right.
Yes, I have a master's in fine arts for writing, and one of the awesome things that while learning all of those different structures and even bringing it back to free verse is you can let the structure influence the free verse. So sometimes I would still hide patterns within things. So a lot of times I may use a lot of repetition, may use a lot of rhyme. I may use, borrow some structure from a villanelle or one of these other forms of poetry.
Wait, what was that word? Villanelle?
Villanelle.
What is that?
It's a French type of, it was a poem that was developed in France. And so what you do is you repeat the rhyme scheme of the third, each stanza is 3 lines. So you repeat the rhyme scheme of the first and third line. And it alternates that way. And you also repeat, B. So the second one. So when I use those type of forms in my free verse, I use those fixed forms a lot of times to influence the free verse. Because I'm sometimes I let myself get, and I'm kind of a student, so I let myself get too complex with it. So I'm I usually try to put in, especially my longer poems, 3 or 4 or 5 different types of literary devices.
Yeah.
Not just rhyme, but maybe alliteration or maybe repetition, or playing with the sound, changing words around and so on, just to challenge myself, and not feel stale. Because the way I see it, if you can't tolerate reading and listening to your own stuff, then how are you going to expect to have an audience want to listen to your stuff?
That is very true, because even myself as a writer and poet, I have a hard time of listening to myself. But you make a good point. If I can't listen to myself, who the hell's gonna listen to me? Shit.
Not for real though. So it was like that. And you want to know something funny though?
Go ahead.
When I first started in school, English, I actually in elementary school I got left back because of English.
Okay.
Right. So I always like find that funny because then because I was forced to learn more of like, ELA. It forced me to like really start loving it. And
ELA, I know ELS is English as a second language. What's ELA?
Oh yeah, it's just English language arts.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're very calm. You just had a baby. You're not like going crazy. How do you tune in the channel? How do you channel your like calmness?
So, I mean, a lot through breathing exercises. So, like just like everybody else and so on, like, a lot of times I deal with anxiety, performance anxiety and so on, especially when it comes to like performing poetry and doing videos and so on. But also I deal with, like, I've dealt with depression throughout different times, and the pandemic, like, really forced me to be with myself. And because of that, I got into breathing exercises. I got into doing a lot of that sort of self-care work. My wife was heavily into yoga.
You guys sound like you guys make a great dynamic.
Yeah, so I just try to just, try to just keep it calm, man. Like there's shit I can control, stuff I can't. So what I can't control, I just leave it.
So, now that you bring that up, I like to give positive affirmations in the middle and beginning of my podcast. And
please.
For this week, I choose to say that I'm becoming more confident every day. So go ahead and give us your positive affirmation.
Shoot. Well, my positive affirmation is, like every day is a new opportunity. You might not get all you want out of that day, but every day is a new opportunity to learn. So, you can always make today better than yesterday. I try to find something good out of every day, even if it's a quote unquote bad day.
I love the energy. I love the positivity. I love how you take even a bad day and turn it into a good day, at least tomorrow or even by the end of the night. I will say this though, we talked a little bit, that we didn't talk. I asked you a couple of questions and you mentioned something about how you had a baby, leaving a legacy and all that stuff. And it's funny because my mom is like, you don't even have kids yet. What's going to happen when you die? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to have anything left behind me, but my podcast, that's going to be on YouTube for the rest of my life, I hope. And on music platforms. But like you have an actual baby. What do you want to, I guess, what do you want her to absorb as she gets older?
Well, the thing about it is I don't want to stifle her creativity, so I want her to know that, hey, it's okay to be creative. And sometimes it's okay to be scared. It's okay to come out of your comfort zone. So like, if anybody who like follows astrology, do you follow astrology?
I kind of, but not fully.
All right. So like, the thing about it is, like they say, Capricorns like workaholics. Like we're like really, really into structure. What? And that's how it can be. Like sometimes I go complete batshit over things that just.
So what is your baby?
Thing. So my baby's a Leo.
Okay. What does that mean?
So she is going. So she's gonna be a big personality. She's already seeming like a big personality. She doesn't cry a lot. She's a pretty zen baby. But she, like Leos, especially like Leos that I know, like very big personalities. Think about former President Obama, and when he had his first speech, accepting the nomination. Uh-huh. You remember the Roman columns and all of that? Like, Leos do it big. So it was recently his birthday, and like then when they talked about like the secret party that he had, like with all of these like celebrities and all that, Leos do it big. They do themselves big. So I as part of that legacy, I just want her to know, hey, it's okay to do it big. It's okay if you want to do it big, it's okay to do it big. It's okay to step out of your comfort zone and so on. And my poetry has really allowed me to be more rigid. Like in my 30s, I'm more easygoing than I was in my 20s. Yeah, in my 20s, I was like I was more structured, I was more rigid on everything like that. I'm like, dude, there's a lot of stuff you can't change.
Yeah.
You know, so hey, you know, so I tend to just be a little bit more easygoing and just step out of my comfort zone. So that's what I want to like leave with her. I mean, if she's interested in poetry, you know, I'm gonna try to have her on a pretty strong level to begin with. You know, have her reading and consuming a lot of poetry as well. But anything that she wants to do, I'll do it. My personal dream for her, because my favorite sport to watch is soccer. My personal dream for her is that she, you know, she's like the next Megan Rapinoe or something.
Okay.
But that, like, you know, so Megan Rapinoe is like the star of the U.S. women's. When it starts,
Is she the one with the purple hair?
One of the purple hair. You know, her and her team have just gotten all kinds of gold medal World Cup victories and all of that. So, you know, if it was my personal dream, but it ain't about me. It's really about her.
I love that parenting phrase. It's not about me, it's about her. Because, you know, nowadays, old school parents, they was just like, you gotta go to college. I didn't go to college. You have a better life than I did. It's like, well, hold on, y'all.
Yeah, it's not about your do-over. You know what I mean? It's not about your do-over. It's about them getting their chance. But the best thing a parent can really do is try the best for themselves to put their kid in as good of a position as possible.
I like that. I like that a lot. Séon, you're very intuitive with yourself and the world right now.
God knows it took a lot of experience, it took a lot of stuff, you know, in life to cause that to happen.
So what advice could you give to somebody who, I guess, who's not intuitive with the world right now? What would you give them, what would you say to them if they needed to adjust to whatever changes coming up ahead?
I mean, really just open up your life and open up your eyes and then ask yourself the question, hey, can I do anything about this, right? Like, and if the answer is no, then it's like no. Like, for instance, like, you know, I have like my own political views, right?
Right.
But like, you know, like with the last president, I would have had different preferences on who would have been president.
Right.
I'm like, can I change that? Can I dwell on the fact that this other person was there? No, there was not a damn thing I could do. Only thing I could have done was vote, and I did that, and it didn't break my way. So, you know what I mean? So that was just really it. Like, so I can control what I can control. You know, I can't control the pandemic. You know what I mean? So only thing I can do is, I'm like, all right, you know, I wash my hands, I put on a mask.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I do what I know common sense I could do, like not even to politicize or make the whole like your podcast and stuff about that, but like, dude, if I'm sneezing, I can't cover my mouth. Yeah. A mask gonna cover my mouth. So I just try to do what I could do personally to control things and stuff around me. I can't, as I said, I can't control the pandemic, can't control politics, can't control world events, so I leave it alone.
Yeah.
You know? But that what I can control, I try to control it. I try to, you know, be a better man today than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
Sometimes I mess up, sometimes I don't.
Well, I like that, honestly, because at the end of the day, like, you can't control what you can't control everything in this world. You know, even though you want to, you can't, and I have to live by that too. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So before we close out for this episode, go ahead and leave my listeners and your audience with something positive. Either it could be a joke or whatever. Just give it to us.
You know what? One of the things that you gotta do is you just gotta here's the positive thing, especially as a poet, right? Poetry is never finished. Like, if you're ever like, you know, I gotta finish this poem, right? You will never finish it.
Yep.
Right? You just gotta be like, you know what? I just, when I write poems, even long ones, I'm just like, okay, cool, I'm good here. Right? And I just cut it off there, right? Like, I'm good here. And just start telling yourself, especially in the writing process, I'm good here. You know what I mean? And that is gonna at least help you, because, dude, when I wrote my first collection of poetry, that it was just called Taboo, available where you get your books. It took me years to write that. And it was like simple, it was like more like erotic poetry and so on. But it was like, it took forever to write that book because I took everything too seriously. Yeah. Psychedelic Mixtape, about a year and a half. And then my book that I'm working, that's coming out, hopefully, I don't know, we gotta get back to the editors and stuff like that. Might come out this year, might come back next year. But it's it's going to be something to do with mirrors, right? Either mirrors, confessions, or mirrors, something like that. And that one, I wrote that book in 6 months. I said, hey, I'm good here on these. And I just started like, as I said, turning a mirror on myself, turning a mirror on society. I'm like, hell, I'm in lockdown.
Yeah.
So we're going to get this done. And that's what it is. So abandon your poetry sometimes. I'm good here. And that's it.
Thank you, Séon. Go ahead and give them your social media one more time so they can follow you and find out anything that you're working on.
All right, and thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, I might have to have you on Poetry Talks.
Let's do it. I just started listening to it, and because I thought you only had one, and I was like, I looked into you more, and I was like, damn, he has another podcast? How the hell is he doing that? But
yeah,
I appreciate you distinguishing two very well.
Yeah, because the thing about it is I was trying to have it on one podcast, but I was like, nah, I started losing my haiku people that are just used to the 1 minute format. So I said, well, let me just branch it out. So my social media is Séon the Poet. That's all one word, Seon, the Poet, all one word. And it's at Instagram, Clubhouse. I mean, usually those are the two I'm on most, but you type Séon the Poet on Instagram or Clubhouse, Facebook, or TikTok, or Snapchat. That's most likely me.
Also, if you type it on Spotify too, Séon the Poet, his podcast comes up.
Both of my podcasts will be there on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you find your podcast. I try to make it go as wide as possible. I want to meet you where you are. I would prefer that you go on Apple Podcasts because there you can write reviews. But if you want to listen to Spotify, Deezer, or whatever else, it's there. Haiku Vibes is one, Poetry Talks is the other. And if you just type my name, then you will find it there. My books are Taboo and Psychedelic Mixtape. They are available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and other fine bookstores. Wherever you get your books, it's available, right? You guys are reading my work. It's for you, so I try to make sure that it's available as much as possible. So thank you for giving me the space and the time to talk.
Oh, you're welcome, and congrats.
And plug my stuff.
And congrats on the new baby.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm gonna go and play with her after this.
Oh, enjoy fatherhood. Enjoy her while she's small, because when she gets older, she hits her teens, she catches attitude. That's a whole different story.
I already told my wife. This could be the funny thing too. I already told my wife. After all was said and done, and so on, we were playing with her. I said, you know what? I said that when she starts mouthing off to you as a teenager, you tell her 27 hours. You tell her 27 hours of labor.
Oh my gosh.
So that was that.
All right, Séon, thank you so much. Enjoy
thanks.
your new family. I mean, the new addition to your family. Keep it going. Keep it strong. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my YouTube at Becky the Poet. And then follow me on Instagram, Becky the Poet, and the podcast, Unspoken Words Podcast. All right, you guys. Love ya.